PPT की first slide लगा. We are live now. Live. Screen पे नाम है. Welcome all the viewers to the live session. Celebrate biodiversity. It's time for nature. As you all know that we all are celebrating World Environment Day, and this World Environment Day is celebrated every year on 5th June. This year's topic is Celebrate Biodiversity. It's time for nature. You all know that this World Environment Day has been started in 1972, and since then every year on 5th June this day is celebrated to make people aware about the pros and cons of environment and what is the individual responsibility of everyone, and to make them aware about those responsibilities we celebrate this day. Today we have with us Dr. Shalini Dhyani madam. Dr. Shalini Dhyani is South Asia Regional Chair of IUCN CEM Commission of Ecosystem Management and Senior Scientist with CSIR National Environmental Engineering Research Institute, India. She is IPBES lead author for Global Thematic Assessment on Sustainable Use of Wild Species and has contributed to Asia Pacific Regional Assessment of Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services in Asia Pacific. She has more than 15 years of experience on conservation and management of ecosystem and biodiversity across India. She has been promoting mainstreaming of nature-based solutions for reducing disaster risk and enhancing climate resilience. Her model for fodder bank in Western Himalayas was among 10 best case studies of SAARC countries for sustainable forest management in mountains in 2014. Dr. Shalini was awarded first IUCN CEM Chair Young Professional Award at World Parks Congress 2014 for her research on forests of Indian Himalayan region. She was selected among 100 women for their exceptional work in Asia by Asian Rural Women's Coalition Malaysia in 2010. She has more than 25 peer-reviewed publications to her credit. She is passionate about science outreach and is a frequent blogger, popular article writer, and has delivered many talks to popularize the importance of ecosystem and nature-based solutions across Asia. Moreover, she always visits Raman Science Centre and always keen to interact with the students and give the message about the environment to the budding scientists and students coming to Raman Science Centre. I welcome Dr. Shalini madam on this occasion, and now I request Dr. Shalini Dhyani madam to please initiate with his lecture. Thank you.
Thank you, Chaudhary sir, for such a warm welcome to me, and also for giving a very nice background to the World Environment Day session that is live from Raman Science Centre, Nagpur. I am so humble and privileged to be here and participate in this very interesting event that is organized through a live session by Raman Science Centre. And I also welcome all the live viewers to this session, especially the students and teachers of 8th to 12th standard who are supposed to be participating in this live session. I am sure this day is very important for not only few of us but for the entire humanity, and this has been, as Dr. Chaudhary also said, that it has been celebrating since 1972. That brings a lot of concern and importance, especially in these tough times for the humanity. The theme for this year is Celebrate Biodiversity, it's time for nature. As I go ahead with my presentation, I would like to urge to all of you, and with all the lockdown period that we all have faced in last 3-4 months and many of the generations might have not seen, this becomes very important now to acknowledge and realize the importance of nature, green spaces around us, and also to acknowledge the importance and human well-being that nature has been supporting to all of us. With these few lines, I start my presentation. Can I have the first slide, please? Can I have the first slide, please? Next slide. Yes, thank you so much. So we all know the importance of biodiversity. The food we eat, the air we breathe, the resources that we are using for our development, all are coming from nature and nature-based solutions. But this is the exceptional times, as I told to all of you, in which nature has been sending us a message to care for ourselves. This humanity can only be survived if nature is supporting us. If we take care of nature, then only nature can take care of us. It's high time that we wake up, to take the notice, to raise our voice, to make sure that destruction, degradation and habitat fragmentation of nature and reduction of species can be reduced and halted. And it's the very important time that UN has been saying that we build back better, not only for the people, for the betterment of the planet. And if you, just to make you aware that this day has been specially dedicated and will be celebrated by Germany and Colombia. Colombia is one of the very biodiverse country of the world. I mean, it stands at almost first and second place when we talk about biodiversity richness in terms of plants, in terms of animals, in terms of forest. So this is one of the very important areas that we will be talking about during this presentation. Next slide, please. So as I told you, Colombia is going to host the World Environment Day in partnership with Germany. And if I read this quote that you see on your slide that was given by UN Director General Dr. Inger Andersen, that 2020 is the year for urgency, the urgency for the ambition and action to address the crisis of nature that nature has been facing. It is also an opportunity to fully incorporate nature-based solution. So when I talk about nature-based solution for global climate action, my presentation will also be talking about what are nature-based solutions and how can we take care of these nature-based solutions to not only address global climate action, but also to reduce the enhancing pandemic risk. Next, please. So as I told earlier, again 2020 year is the year of reflection, opportunity and solutions. Why? For last 4 to 5 months, we have been listening how WHO, every day WHO chair has been coming and asking all the countries to take care by using the sanitizers, making social distancing a practice. And as we enter the new normal, it is very important that we take care of all the best practices that can help us to bend the curve of and flatten the curve of COVID-19. But as we progress to flatten the curve of COVID-19, we have also to make sure the curve of degradation of biodiversity is also reduced, it is also flattened. So this is one of the key messages that pandemic has given us. I am sure many of our viewers, especially teachers and senior students from 10th to 12th standards are now knowing how this COVID-19 has emerged from the markets of Wuhan, where illegal meat and wild trade has actually led to escape of a lot of zoonotics, diseases that come from wild animals to humans. And there are so many such examples where SARS, HIV, Nipah, and recently you have also heard about Ebola that again outbroke in Congo. So these are some of the examples of some of the disastrous diseases that have been stressing and making concern to entire humanity. So we actually need to flatten the curve of biodiversity as well. Next slide. Now this is again another picture to show you, if only pandemic was not the only thing that was hurting and affecting the entire humanity, we in last year faced mostly the people living on the transboundary areas of Bangladesh and West Bengal, where Amphan hit very badly. And those who have closely observed Amphan through news pieces or media channels, they know how Sundarban Delta actually broke this entire Amphan and reduced the intensity of this cyclone. So this is the beauty of nature. This is the warmth of nature that has reduced a lot of risk for the humanity. So after Amphan, you might be now hearing how the screen is, yeah. So now with Amphan, you might also be knowing how swarming of locust is attacking Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Maharashtra, Gujarat, UP and many other states of the country. So this huge challenge of climate change, the swarming and breeding of locust, and also may also give rise to the next agrarian crisis to the countries that are falling in the locust zone. And then just 2 days back, there was this the cyclone Nisarg that hit the west coast, especially Mumbai and adjoining areas. So these are some of the concerns, some of the indicators that nature is trying to show what we have done in last so many years, so many decades. The rampant loss of biodiversity needs to be checked, it needs to be reduced, it needs to be halted. Next slide please. There is a need right now that we now start thinking about eco-civilization, a civilization where our practices will be more ecological, more nature friendly, and will be able to reduce our ecological footprint, carbon footprint, water footprint and also the carbon footprint. So when I talk about ecological solutions, we mean that we reduce our electricity demands, we reduce our fuel demands, we also reduce our demands that lead to more wastewater going to nature, the rivers, wetlands and oceans. At the same time, we also need to consider that our lifestyle is more sustainable in a way that we have more or less dependency on natural resources, and we can assure that all the living beings, all the other wild animals are actually given more priority and more space like us to survive. Next slide. So if I see the entire picture of biodiversity loss, and when I discuss all these things, I would like to ask you and put this question in front of my all live audience: why do actually ecosystems, biodiversity and nature matters to us? Is it such a small thing, or is it such a huge thing that we actually need to discuss and give a prioritization in terms of our thinking and our actions? The next important question that emerges in all our minds is, what may be the strategies that can help us manage those uncertainties that humanity is facing, and what are the nature-based solutions or ecosystem-based approaches that can help us to actually address those challenges? Next slide. Next slide please. So when I talk about ecosystems, I know we all talk about healthy ecosystems. You talk about Himalayas or you talk about Western Ghats. Yeah. So this is one of the pictures that shows why ecosystems are very important to be considered. You might heard of a lot of stories that are coming on Google and social media that now we see a lot of wild animals coming and inhabiting and visiting a lot of urban areas because of the deserted situation that we have created in the lockdown period. This actually can be seen as a very positive picture also, where you can see, though there are chances of man-animal conflict also, but there is a situation where actually lockdown has shown us that there are other animals and living beings that actually also require these places like we require on this planet. We also have seen a lot of biodiversity in wild areas, like you see on the roadsides or wastelands have started blooming because people are not interfering with nature, people are inside their homes. So these are some of the bigger lessons in last 3 months that humanity has seen. So it's time that we acknowledge that nature has its own benefit and we need these benefits for our survival. Next slide please. And then another picture that I show you on the screen is about, suddenly there is a bloom on nature-based medicines and Ayurveda and all those naturopathy that people have been using not to actually treat COVID-19 and other pandemics, but actually to build immunity of human well-being. And when I talk about these medicines, one of the very interesting example comes from Madagascar. Here you see a CVO drink that has been popularized by the president of Madagascar and has been given a lot of free samples to many countries in Africa. This was basically a plant, Artemisia, and that is nature's benefit that has helped many people in Africa to build the immunity. Now WHO is also doing a lot of clinical trials on seeing the potential of this drug. Even in China, from where this pandemic emerged, the doctors and the naturopaths have tried to go beyond allopathy and other medicine and tried to see how Chinese medicine, how naturopathy, how plant-based medicine can actually be actually a very good health support and benefit people who are living or are suffering from pandemic, especially COVID-19. Next slide, please. Now coming to our country, I am sure during the COVID-19 period, our Arogya Setu app was helping all of us to make sure to understand how far we are from the any COVID positive patient, but at the same time, some plants suddenly gained a lot of popularity. A lot of popularity was there about these plants and Ayurveda. All of the people who are inside homes, they have tried to use Tinospora or Giloy tablets, and these Tinospora has been proven in Ayurveda to actually build immunity, and there is a huge demand now rising for Tinospora or Giloy. Then a lot of people, even in a lot of governments have been promoting Ayurveda based kadha that is prepared from a lot of herbal medicines and spices that has helped to build immunity. I was hearing one of the stories from Gujarat where government has made it compulsory not only for COVID-19 patient but all sorts of front role players in COVID-19 pandemic like doctors, nurses and even police people to actually have kavla at regular intervals so that they can build immunity. What are these examples of? These examples are of nature. We need to celebrate nature, we need to acknowledge the benefits of nature. Then another picture showing you how Chyawanprash was introduced and by India and how now entire world is listening to these benefits of Ayurveda, of plants and biodiversity in healing the humanity, healing the ill effects of COVID-19. Next slide. And this very interesting slide comes from my own experience that I have been observing in last 3 months. As a scientist, I was trying to see in last 3 months how people have been going back to nature for getting food sources. When in many Western countries, a lot of food supplies were not there, people started growing their own food. People started going to see their own backyards for food. And there were around more than 100 articles, informal articles, where people were talking about urban foraging or wild foraging, where you collect your plants from your own native areas, your neighboring areas to actually make food out of it. Similar examples were coming from different parts of India like Kerala. I was hearing one of the stories from my father who called me and told me that there was this plant called Solanum nigrum. We call it makoi in Hindi. So this particular plant, leaves are being used by people in many northern states of the country to make food because it's very nutritious and they have been doing this during their childhood. But now when the time is there, when they didn't have enough of vegetable supplies, regular supplies in first lockdown period, many people actually went back to their roots and tried to relish all these interesting, lesser known, underutilized wild edibles. Next slide. One of the important aspects that people tried to explore during this depressing times, when one of the stressing times when being inside your houses was quite suffocating, people started rejuvenating their own home gardens. Many of them started growing their own vegetables, and this was one of the psychological benefits that nature brought to them. Once you grow your own food, you feel the connectedness with nature, you feel that belongingness, and this brought a lot of psychological benefits to people. Many of them started even making kitchen garden manure from their own wet waste. A lot of them have also observed have started going back to making bioenzymes. So these bioenzymes are nothing but reducing your carbon footprint, you're reducing your ecological footprint, because now you try to make sure the waste that you are throwing out and increasing your footprint is going to be reduced. You don't actually you don't actually throw a lot of waste, you don't make a lot of wastewater to the nearby wetlands or rivers or lakes. So these are some of the ways I wanted to show you how nature connectedness has brought a lot of satisfaction to people even during this lockdown period, and these are some of the interesting examples that humanity and a lot of us will remember for a very longer time what this lockdown period has taught us. And one of the very important example has been respecting nature, acknowledging nature and realizing the benefits of nature. Now when I talk about nature moving ahead from this local perspective to a broader area, I think you all see all these bigger logos that I am showing here. many of the senior students might have seen, many of them might have not seen, because these are all very global level inferences. So, biodiversity is something very important. It's a very cross-cutting theme. You talk about disasters, you talk about pandemics, you talk about climate change, you talk about disaster risk reduction, human well-being. This cannot be achieved unless and until we ensure that biodiversity around us is conserved and protected. So, now there is a huge global concern and momentum going on that we need to ensure that biodiversity is protected and our ecosystems are very much healthy and restored in coming decade or so, to make sure that we do not feel brunt of nature in a way that we have been facing in last few years. These are some of another areas that have been quite popularized and quite talked about in last 2-3 years. One of the important area was last year the IPBES, the Intergovernmental Panel on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, released this very important global assessment report that said that more than 1 lakh of species around the world are threatened. Then there was this climate change and land report that showed that land degradation is a mega driver for biodiversity loss and will stress upon the survival of human well-being. Then the report on global warming 1.5 degree was again a talk last year. Next slide. So, now the entire consensus and concern of the entire global fraternity is to build back better. This slogan is basically used when we talk about disaster risk reduction, but somehow to build back nature, it is very much important that we start thinking in the same way for nature conservation, so that the nature can develop resilience not only for ecosystem but also for society to recover from this pandemic and other risks that are standing just next to our door. Next slide. Now, what is resilience? Just in a very layman perspective, I wanted to share with you that resilience for all the students and teachers, this is an ability to recover easily from a misfortune or change. Suddenly, if there is a change in environment and if you have a healthy ecosystem, it will be very easy for you to adjust. But if you do not have healthy ecosystem support, maybe it will be very tough for you or very tough for the ecosystem or society to actually adjust with this change and survive. So, adaptation is something that resilience can help us with. Next slide. Now, we all know around our country and even beyond our country, there is an exponential rise of vulnerability of society due to disasters. Disasters have been increasing in a very fast pace. You see forest fires in Brazil or landslides in Sikkim and Uttarakhand. You see this Belandur lake or any other lake in the country that is polluted, and most of the lakes that you see around us are also at one level polluted. Then there is a risk of increasing disasters of cyclones and super cyclones. So, the disaster intensity around the world has increased manifold in last few years. Next slide please. But why do disasters are mattering to sustainable development? Why do actually we need to consider these disasters when we talk about biodiversity? Any kind of disaster has a significant impact on sustainable development of the country. I will show you one of the examples. When there is a degradation of natural resources in any part of the country, in any part of the world, if there is a degradation and there is an impact on natural resources, it actually affects ecosystem services. And when there is a effect on ecosystem services, be it provisioning, the food services, the carbon sequestration services, the water regulation cycles, they all get hampered. And when this reduced flow of ecosystem services is, so the disaster not only affects the ecosystem or the topography of the area, it also actually increases a lot of social vulnerability. So, when I talk social vulnerability, it means that the socio-economics of the area is hit badly. The people who get their own entire social structure is hampered badly. For example, if we take example of COVID or Amphan, the biggest hit of this Amphan or any kind of pandemic was on the lower group of the society. When I talk a lower group of society, that means mostly poorest of the poor were badly hit. Their livelihood has gone, their economic benefits has gone, and they were mostly in hand to mouth situation. So, this is, and this high range impact of any kind of disaster on human well-being and societal development. Next slide please. So, we are slowly, all the countries across the world are now slowly realizing, but still trying to ignore the fact that nature matters for developing resilience for the world, and ecosystem strategies have a proven potential for managing these uncertainties. For that, we need to actually harness the benefits and nature's contribution to people. When I say these lines, I remember after the Wuhan outbreak, suddenly China came and the government imposed a ban on any kind of wild meat trade and wild meat, consumption of wild meat. So, this was a sudden reflection how pandemic has affected post 2020 biodiversity strategies around the world. There is a huge ecological linkage and ecosystem linkage to reduce any kind of disaster, any kind of pandemic that humans are facing. This is one of the pictures where you see how degradation has affected most of our ecosystem. This is one of the pictures from northeast where indigenous people do jhum cultivation, and at the other point where we worked is one of the examples of rat hole mining that has disastrously damaged the entire ecosystem of Meghalaya. Next please. Then again, one of the important landscapes in Indian Himalayan region from where Ganga originates, you can see it on the picture. On the other side is Western Ghat, one of the biodiverse area. Both of the areas are very biodiverse hotspot areas, but at the same time, if we degrade these resources, if there is an intensive development on the cost of biodiversity, this will lead to more flash floods, more disasters that humanity will face in the coming years. Next slide please. Another example how biodiversity can be a very good buffer to ecological challenges. This is another example of a beautiful lake in Nainital where this entire green catchment has been helping to reduce any kind of pollutant to actually enter and pollute these lakes. Example of coastal areas, the mangroves. We all know that mangroves help India in a large extent, and many countries who have these beautiful mangrove areas. Especially the potential was realized when tsunami long back hit the coast of Tamil Nadu, where the lot of intensity of disaster was reduced just because of the mangroves. And recently we felt the same when Foni hit Odisha last year, and recently Amphan, where the intensity of the entire cyclone was reduced by 1/6. If the intensity was large, the kind of damage Amphan brought to Kolkata would have been many-fold. Another example of why we need to recognize and acknowledge biodiversity is the crop diversification. A lot of drought tolerant varieties have been always sown by indigenous and local people across India. But as we have developed, we have tried to ignore most of these drought tolerant varieties that require less water and that require less fertilizer. But at the cost of developing more and more food and to fulfill the demands of growing population of the country, we have somehow ignored these important crops. So, if we still keep doing that, maybe there will be time we do not have enough of varieties that will be able to feed a larger population of the country. It is high time we start seeing this traditional way of looking to nature and agrobiodiversity. So, giving you an entire perspective, when UN has decided to have ecosystem as a decade from 2021 to 2030, it is very important now that we have a comprehensive and sophisticated understanding of contemporary trends on biodiversity. Unless we bring these novel aspects with a new approach, we will not be able to address the targets of ecosystem restoration that UN has given us. Next slide. So, now coming to the main area of interest for all the students sitting in the live view, that nature based solutions have a huge scope, and IUCN Commission on Ecosystem Management has been spearheading this movement of bringing nature based solution to the support of reducing biodiversity loss and degradation. It is basically the action to protect and conserve natural resources, and also to address societal benefits. So, when we talk about nature benefits, it is not only to conserve nature, but at the same time giving livelihood to the poorest of poor people, so that we can harness the benefits of biodiversity for a very long time. Second important, I'll just also like to show that a lot of sustainable livelihoods can be supported, because India has a lot of degraded wasteland, and at the same time we also have one of the poorest of poor people living in the country near to these forest areas. So if we involve both of them, we will be able to actually address and achieve the benefits of nature based solutions in the country, and we have so many examples already there. So nature based solution is one of a very broad umbrella term that you see on your screen. This is a very situation specific plan where you cannot just put one t-shirt that fits all. It has to be very situation specific. So there are a lot of benefits and a lot of ways you can do nature based solution to address a lot of societal challenges. So approaches are like restoration, issue specific conservation, infrastructure development, management and protection of nature. And the societal challenges that you can address are reducing and improving the microclimate. For example, in urban areas we have a lot of highlands, heat islands. So reduce the temperature in heat islands. You can also ensure food security, ensure water benefits, reduce disaster risk, habitat conservation and so on and so forth. Now these are an array of NBS concepts that you see on your screen, and they can be used and planned as per situation arises. For example, ecological restoration, ecological engineering, green infrastructure. So when I talk about green infrastructure in urban areas, it is very important that you have sufficient amount of green spaces. If you don't have sufficient amount of green and blue spaces in your cities, the challenges that the urban areas of country are facing will be manifold. Then climate adaptation, ecosystem based disaster risk reduction, area based conservation are some of the other areas that can be looked for. So these are just some of the examples. Nature based solutions are very much aligned with international goals, and they need to be very much now aligned with national goals. The Sendai framework of disaster risk reduction, the Convention on Biodiversity, the Sustainable Development Goal, the Paris COP, all of them have been actually promoting nature based solution, and these solutions have the benefit to not only give you provisioning services but other services. For example, if you are planting a forest to enhance groundwater depletion, maybe you will not only address this situation, you will also be able to increase the carbon sink in the area, you will also be able to increase biodiversity in area, pollinators will be there, and in a better way you can also create an aesthetic area where people can visit. So the co-benefits of nature based solutions are immense. Nature based solutions actually are not isolated solutions. You have to put people and nature both at the same platform, then only you can plan to design nature based solutions. These approaches and solutions try to seek balance between conservation and biodiversity, and it is not only relevant for professional, it is relevant for anybody. It is relevant for all kind of stakeholders, from urban planners to researchers to scientists to people who are working in these areas. And it is very important that the entire process of change of ecosystem is well understood, and it is very crucial in the time when climate change and such pandemics are creating a huge risk to the entire humanity. And these are one of the examples that are being shown on the next screen. For example, if there is a landslide or there is a flash flood, if you build a protection wall or you build a landslide, you protect the landslide by making an engineered solution, for example, making a protection wall or a mesh work, maybe you will be able for a short time to reduce disaster risk and hazard mitigation, but there are so many benefits that will never be addressed. For example, you will not be able to address socio-economic resilience or carbon sequestration or biodiversity or sustainable livelihood or climate change. On the other hand, if you go to the next figure that talks about nature based solutions, you see you have a lot of benefits. You are targeting climate adaptation, you are targeting hazard mitigation, you are also targeting disaster prevention, but it also comes with a lot of benefits like sustainable livelihoods, heritage and culture, stabilization of regional climate, water and soil protection, carbon sequestration, so on and so forth. Next slide. And now when I move with this brief introduction about nature based solution, Now I talk about the urban area we all are living in. This is an area that has been long taken as a challenge for the growth of the country, where there is a huge expansion happening across India. And just to tell you some of the statistics, it is already estimated by 2030, almost 70% of the global population will be living in urban areas, and by 2050, every fourth person living in urban areas will be coming from Asia, especially China and India. So it's very important for Asian countries to actually think in a very proactive manner. Rich biodiversity can be existing in any part of the country, be it an urban area or rural area. These are some of the examples of Thane Creek, where you see these beautiful flamingos or these beautiful animals that you see in Bangalore. Many such animals and plants are thronging in different parts of the country, be it Nagpur or Pune or any other part of the country. So biodiversity is basically the natural capital of the country, and unless we protect it, it will be very tough for us to manage our urban resilience and urban conservation. Next slide. This is one of the pictures showing you how Nagpur has progressed in all these decades. At one point of time, few decades back, Nagpur was one of the greenest city of the country, but when you see in 2016 and now we have seen also in 2018 and 19 the same kind of remote sensing images, a huge part of these cities is now having infrastructure build up. We don't have enough green spaces. There is a huge demand supply gap in most of these urban areas, where people don't have enough spaces to actually go and relax in the evening. So this crunch is going to enlarge, this gap is going to enlarge in future, and if at an individual level we don't start planning proactively, there will be a huge mess in future. So the continuous unplanned development and increase in build-up area without giving a thought is going to be a crux. Urban spaces are no more the talk of present, where now even younger generation prefers to go in mall and PVR. It's high time we think about the psychological benefits, because at one point in life we'll realize we are going to miss something very seriously. So any kind of further exploitation of nature and natural resources will erode the living conditions of most of the living beings on the planet. Next. Next, yeah. So if I see this entire picture, I see a lot of positivity still. The urban green spaces in campus, the urban green spaces in public areas like public parks or playgrounds or even home gardens, kitchen gardens, they are some of the positive pictures of people suddenly realizing that their solutions are in nature, and unless nature, you get connected with nature, you cannot have the benefits that you have been reaping for so long. The nature has the potential to give you the biggest carbon sink available. No other mechanical solution can give you that benefit. It can help you to manage the wetlands and lakes and rivers of the country. It can help you to recharge groundwater, because there is no other way how we can recharge groundwater. Unless and until there is more plantation, we will not have enough of groundwater. And with the urban areas turning into the concretized jungle, we have reduced infiltration capabilities of these areas. Heat island, one of the emerging areas, can only be addressed if we have the plants that are able to reduce air pollution and are able to reduce the microclimate of the area. Just giving you a very interesting example, most of the campus forest, even the small green spaces, for example, I am sitting here in Raman Science Centre that has very good green space. I come from NEERI, that is in the heart of city and has some 40 hectares of very good urban forest, can help to reduce at least 3 degrees centigrade of temperature and make your microclimate more better for you to survive in the harsh summers of the central India. Then it also helps you to reduce and enhance biodiversity. I am showing you some of the pictures how in last few years we have been trying to influence people, trying to mainstream nature-based solutions and conservation of biodiversity, not only in policy planning but also in other stakeholder involvement, because unless you as next generation are convinced that nature is where our answers are lying, nature is something that we not only need to celebrate but we need to talk and discuss every day, every time of the week, will not be able to address all these bigger challenges that we are facing, and maybe the larger part you will be facing in coming years. These are some of the interesting things that we have been doing with IUCN. This is one of the books that we have recently and will be online soon, and some of the blogs, because I am sure the younger generation is more interested to read blogs and all these social media things. So we have been writing a lot through some of the platforms where we talk about lesser known underutilized wild edibles. You might ask your parents what kind of wild edibles or lesser known plants they have relished in their childhood that you no more listen about or they no more see about. These are something that I will seek your interest to just share these interests. You can go back to your grandparents or parents to ask and revive all these knowledge that have been long lost with the process of development. So some of the concluding thoughts that I would like to make, that there is an urgent need that we integrate value of ecosystem in whatever kind of planning we are doing. For example, not only industrial development, also in your cities, if there is a new high-rise building coming or not a new house that you are building up, make sure at least 33% of that area is green, because unless we make that as an individual step, we will not be able to achieve that bigger target of making our city and making our country green and biodiverse. Resilience perspective that I talked about is very necessary to go in your thinking. Many of you will be urban planners, politicians, scientists and other stakeholders. So if this thought goes with you for the next generation, I am sure half of the target will be achieved for post 2020 biodiversity conservation. There has need of orientation of not only developers but also teachers and students to keep thinking and keep imbibing and sharing this thought of celebrating biodiversity and thinking that it's high time we accept that it's time for nature, and we need to move from a new eco-civilization. Before I go and end my talk, I'll share a very interesting story that I have been always sharing to whomsoever I speak. So this story has been shared with the senior people as well as youngsters and live audience. There is this very beautiful picture of a wetland where you see a person who is having a boat and standing on it, and there is another picture. So this picture comes from Kolkata, and you cannot imagine such beautiful lakes and such beautiful nature based solutions are available in urban areas. The beauty of this important wetland is that it is the only man made wetland in the country that is a Ramsar site. So it is a protected wetland, and the person who is standing is Dr. Dhruv Jyoti Ghosh, who was an engineer turned anthropologist turned ecologist, and he saw this beauty of nature. We all understand and we all know our parents are using ROs in our homes to purify water, but can you believe the nature of sun, the sun rays is much more, beyond to actually treat a lot of things. So this story is about Kolkata, and Kolkata is one of the cheapest city of the country where you get the most cheapest breakfast and food. And the reason is not any politician's policy or subsidy. It is only because this lake is in the heart of the city, and you get the cheapest vegetable because you don't spend a lot of money in that. This particular lake produces more than 10,000 tons of fish. And at the same time, the important thing is it is not just a lake, it's a constructed wetland. So a lot of sewage that comes from Kolkata is basically treated, and it is treated by using the energy and the sun rays, the same UV rays that you are using in your own RO systems. And this supports the entire food system of a big city that otherwise could have been really tough, and Kolkata could have been another expensive city. So just to show you some of the examples, this was one interesting example, and I thank you for your patience because I am sure listening for a longer time needs a lot of patience. Thank you so much. I am sure you enjoyed this talk, and if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer. If you want to ask online, I am able to answer for the next few minutes, and if you are not able to ask right now, I have my emails flashing on your screens. You can write to me anytime. I will be happy to interact even in future with you. Thank you so much, Raman Science Centre, Chaudhary sir, and all the staff who is sitting along with me to celebrate World Environment Day. If despite of all these odds, you all have made this event successful, and I am so thankful and privileged to be part of this program with all of you. Thank you so much. Namaskar.
Dear friends, it's our privilege to have Madam Shalini Dhyani here, and she has conducted a very good session, interactive session on a topic. It's time for nature, and she has very nicely explained the importance of nature in our life to maintain the balance between our developments and between the livelihood that we are dependent on nature, and how we can preserve the nature for the betterment of our society and for our future. So on behalf of Raman Science Centre and all of our viewers, we thank Dr. Dhani Madam for coming over here and delivering a wonderful session on the topic, it's time for the nature. I hope that you all will take it in the right spirit and pay your attention to the nature to maintain its importance in our life and to drive it further for our benefits. Thank you all. Thank you, madam. Thank you. I request Chaudhary sir to, as a token of our love, to offer just a small memento to Madam on behalf of all of us.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all. This session goes to an end now, and thanks to all the viewers, to NEERI, National Environmental Engineering Research Institute, for collaborating with us in conducting this session and today's Environment Day celebration. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.